Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lessons Learned. This is episode 19. We're still going over Jordan Peterson's book, Maps of Meaning, and I'm Dillon.
And I'm Evan. And in today's episode, Jordan Peterson delves into two different ways that people act out evil, and he goes into how they are equally destructive. Then he argues that these specific ways of acting out evil had disastrous consequences in the 20th century that cannot be forgotten.
Okay. All right, we're gonna start this episode just like the last one.
Yeah.
With an answer from last week's episode.
So I'll read that question real fast.
Yeah, go for it.
Last week, we asked, clearly according to Jordan Peterson, we are all capable of evil. Do you think that evil is therefore a part of human nature?
And this this answer comes in again anonymously, but from one of you guys, y'all watching. You could be picked next time. And this is the answer. Personally, I've said there's no such thing as bad people, just bad decisions. Meaning people aren't purely bad, they just make habits of decisions that hurt people. So, to me, evil is a byproduct of human nature. The ability to do evil is part of human nature, which I believe is what Mr. Peterson is getting at.
I have a little bit of beef.
Yeah, go for it. Beef it up.
So,
Like stroganoff.
well, first of all, I agree that people aren't purely bad
Mm-hmm.
because we do all have good in us. But to say that evil is a byproduct of human nature
Mm-hmm.
is just to say that evil is a part of human nature.
Yes.
Because if it's just a byproduct that exists, then it has to be a consequence of the thing, and so it is part of the thing.
Yeah.
At least in this. There can be other situations where that's a different thing.
No, I would agree.
Um,
And like exhaust is a byproduct of a car, but it's still like part of a car. Like,
hmm And maybe, I think maybe the distinction is just being made that the evil isn't in the human nature,
mm-hmm.
but the ability to do evil is the part of human nature,
Mm-hmm.
which is an important distinction.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe I disagree. I think it is just part of human nature.
We've really thrown you on a loop for this one.
Well, yeah, it's a philosophical question. I don't know.
I love
Takes a lot of
philosophical
thinking.
questions, though.
I like them. What do you think?
Oh, I was hoping
I mean,
that your beef was gonna be a little longer.
No, I just think my beef is evil as a byproduct of human nature means that evil is a part of human nature,
Look, I think
in my opinion.
people, if you make a decision that hurts people, I would argue, not always, but often, it can be subjective, especially in today's culture.
Mhm.
I'm offended. I mean,
Mhm.
Jordan Peterson right now, and hopefully by this time.
Wait, hold on. I just thought of the other part of my beef
Yes,
is that
Stroganoff.
saying that it's the ability to do evil, specifically the ability part implies that you don't have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think day to day, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to do it,
Yeah,
but it is not possible for us to be perfect.
right. No,
So-
it's not.
Therefore, we have to be at some point doing evil.
Yeah. Well, again, like I was saying, it's subjective. There's so many people that are easily offended.
Mm-hmm.
You could be the most evil person ever in somebody's eyes because everything you've ever done has offended them.
Mm-hmm.
But in a more objective, unbiased perspective, all you've ever done is good things. Again, not a perfect individual, but all you've ever done, at least in honest, good-hearted attempts, is good, positive things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when you hurt somebody, that's up to interpretation, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, again, like stabbing somebody that would hurt anyone, unless you're Superman, which, no. But
But also, if you stab Superman, you're not really stabbing him because it's not penetrating his skin.
that's why I said, unless you're Superman.
Right.
You can't hurt him.
Yeah, but
You might hurt his feelings, though. To be completely honest, I bet if you walked up to Superman and you just tried to stab him, I bet he'd be like,
he'd be a little upset.
yeah, I'd be sad.
Yeah.
If I was invincible to knife stabs, if I was invincible in general, and you, my friend Evan, came up and like stabbed me, but didn't know I was invincible, I'd be like,
Really?
oh, well, I'd
Yeah.
be sad.
Yeah.
So you know, you hurt Superman. You hurt him in a emotional
A
way.
deeper way.
It's a deeper cut, really.
Emotional wounds are slower to heal. Especially when you're Superman.
I think it's the funniest part because Evan has no emotions. He's actually a robot.
I don't.
He doesn't know what sentimental value is, which kills me a little bit because I have a
I
lot of
know what it
sentimental
is.
value. No, you don't. You don't understand.
I
what
just
it
don't
is.
prioritize it
No,
as much
it's
as you.
it's not a priority. It just is. It
No,
just
it's fine.
exists.
Look, let's get into some stuff.
Fine.
Okay. Let's talk about fascists.
This is why we talk about books, guys.
You know what I mean?
Let's talk about fascists.
Yeah. So,
Fascism is just the opposite of socialism, but they're both at the same part of the circle.
so that's related. But he talks about two kind of main categories of people that commit evil,
Okay.
or the ones that specifically.
I was gonna say something, just blurt it, but I was worried
That's
about
fine.
demonetization.
That's fine. That's probably good. The people that tried to get rid of the unknown because they're scared of it and stuff. I wanted to say, I usually don't like to recommend this because it's a pain for some people. If like you're limited on time, we get that.
Mhm.
But I would recommend going back and watching the last episode if you haven't before this one, because there's a lot of stuff that's going to directly relate to this. So I would just go back, just make sure you understand that one. And the whole thing, it's interesting. It's all about evil
Yeah.
and lying and how we do it with ourselves. So I would just go back as a preface.
And honestly, I would go back and start with episode 1 and watch them all.
That's a long time.
N-
I
you-
wasn't going to say that.
well, somebody had to.
Right.
It wasn't going to
That's
be a
our plug.
commenter.
That's our plug.
That's our plug. That
Go back and watch all of
today's
them.
ad was sponsored to you by Lessons Learned.
Yeah.
Watch all our episodes from 1 to 19.
Okay. Let's get into
Back
fascism.
to the show.
So, fascists are people that are scared of the unknown, and so they fatally attempt to operate only based on tradition, ignoring the potential of the heroic process of adaptation. So, the way that these people try to survive is they're so scared of the unknown that they kind of try to identify with a group
Mm-hmm.
and use the experiences that have been learned previously of the group so that they themselves don't have to deal with the unknown. So the way to say
Is
it,
that exclusive to fascists?
that's what he's defining a fascist as.
Interesting.
So he uses it a little bit outside the scope of where we normally think about fascists.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd use other words that aren't any of those. But...
Yeah, so this is the way he's using the word.
Okay.
He says fascists aim, therefore, for pure identification with the group.
Mm-hmm.
So they try to remove all of the chaos
Mm-hmm.
by only focusing on the order.
Yeah.
Okay. They tried to restrict uncertainty
Mm-hmm.
and evade the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And he does talk about them also being like Nazi fascist
Yes.
kind of stuff.
That's how I'm actually trying to apply this definition right now.
Yeah. So he says underneath the fascists' professed patriotism
Mm-hmm.
and cowardly love of order is the even more profound phenomenon. Hatred for the tragic conditions of existence and for the vulnerable life that makes those conditions evident. So pretty much what they're trying to do is, like I said, use patriotism, use the group, use tradition, so that they just never have to think about the unknown.
Yeah.
And when the unknown comes up, they will just deny it or suppress it. And obviously that's not avoidable.
Right.
Or I mean, yeah, that's unavoidable.
Yeah.
Um,
Because lying is bad.
Yeah.
Do not lie, period. This is technically the 4th time.
you've
If
said
you
that.
watched last week's episode, maybe you'd get the joke.
Wow. Okay.
Incentives.
You
You have to
I'm just gonna-
incentivize them.
I don't know how to transition out of that, so I'm just going to bring up a quote.
We've all
Following,
been there.
following in the footsteps of others seems safe
Right.
and requires no thought, but it is useless to follow a well-trodden trail when the terrain itself has changed. What do you think? I like that.
I know, I really like that. I think that is like if you want to talk about like what's going on in today's atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the percentage of people that identified as anything other than male or female
Mm-hmm.
from, I don't know, maybe not today, it was a very small number.
What's your point?
That the people nowadays are just following this trend because it gets you attention.
So,
but that trend isn't always good.
I see what you're saying. That doesn't quite relate to this,
Oh, I failed.
just because this is specifically talking about tradition.
Oh,
It's relating to the things that have already been.
like making cookies on Christmas?
Sure.
Like tradition?
Sure.
Okay.
I guess.
Okay.
It's just identification with a group so that you don't have to face the unknown yourself.
Right. How is that not what I was...
It can be, but I think maybe it's not wrong, but the way he talks about it and he's going to talk about it, especially in the 20th century,
Mhm.
is more of the history and tradition based.
Okay. I'm curious to see where he goes with this.
So, any thoughts about the fascist?
Nazis are bad.
Yes, that is correct.
That is all.
Well, then the next one we have is the decadent.
That's not
So,
that what I...
a decadent is like, I don't remember if he uses the word or not. It's like a nihilist. Like nihilism, you think nothing matters, everything's meaningless.
Yeah, and I won't do my bit song again.
A decadent is like that. So
So just say, why doesn't he use nihilist though?
I don't know, he likes his own words. He says
I like
decadence
words too.
decadents reject order itself as they identify with nothing,
Okay.
because nothing matters. Those who think that things do have value are, quote, clearly diluted, weak, and despicable. So pretty much the way that these people think is like, I'm smarter than everyone else. They think that things matter. I understand that things don't matter. So I'm better than all of them. You know what I'm saying?
You can't look me in the eyes and say that.
Why?
Not
That's what it
expect
is.
me to laugh.
So that's how the decadent's opposite from the fascist.
That is.
They are trying to fully identify with order. These guys are fully identifying with chaos, and they're rejecting order outright.
And I fully identify with neither.
Right, that would be good. That's the preferable way.
So I assume this is like polar opposites.
Yes,
This is
these
what
are
he's
like
getting at.
the polar opposites in terms of order and chaos.
Yeah.
The hero would probably be more so one foot in each
Yeah.
camp.
Kind of like Mace Windu.
Make it work.
Oh, you
Explain
want?
it.
Oh, okay. So Mace Windu. For those of you who are Star Wars nerds, you know exactly where I'm going with this. Other than the fact that Samuel L. Jackson was like, I want a purple lightsaber, there was actually a reason for him and his character having a purple lightsaber and what Mace Windu does. Basically, what Mace Windu is, and some nerd's going to correct me because I'm definitely going to get this specific wrong, but Mace Windu believed in both the good and bad of the Force, the light and the dark, and what you end up seeing is like Ahsoka Tano becomes a gray Jedi.
That's what I was going to bring up next.
Yes. So Mace Windu is actually one of the, like, I don't know if he's the first, but I know Ahsoka Tano is a gray Jedi, and I know Mace Windu did do that practice. Is he looked at the dark side of the Force to see what there was to offer, not as like a temptation thing, but to learn from it and to use what is only looked at as like, this is all bad. This is a wall of bad. And he was like, well, no. So, like, what is there to learn from this? You know, 1 foot in... But I feel like Mace Windu put, like, a toe in it. Like, Ahsoka's like, nope, I'm standing in the middle.
Well, I was wondering if she'd be what he would call a decadent. Where she's kind of like, I'm above all of this, identifying with a group, you know...
Okay, full disclosure, I never finished the Clone Wars series.
Okay, I didn't
So
either.
I can't strongly speak for Ahsoka.
No, but I watched Mandalorian, and she's in that. And she's just on her own on that one planet.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that's like a decadent. It's not like she's like, nothing matters. She's just like, well, the Jedi Order is an extreme.
But she's kind of rejecting both sides.
Yes. So she's in the middle.
But I don't think so, because the way he's talking about it, the hero would be in the middle, and she's certainly not the hero because she took her foot out of order. She doesn't.
But you just said that.
No. What I mean by that is
order and chaos.
But I don't. I guess my argument is I don't think the Sith are chaos. I think that they're just evil.
Both sides are order. They're just orders on different extremes.
Yes, and I think she's opposing both of the order.
Correct.
And she's identifying with chaos.
See, I wouldn't say she identifies with chaos.
Then what does she identify with? Because it's not order.
It's balance.
No.
Yes, that's what the Great Jedi is all about.
Okay, so where's the order?
What do
Where's
you
the
mean?
order?
You don't need order. It's balance.
What
Does
are you
the hero
balancing?
does the
What
hero
are you
have
balancing?
order?
Yes.
Okay. Do they have chaos?
Yes.
Is that called balance?
Yes.
There you go.
Oh no. Okay, if
Yes!
that's true, then where is the balance with order and chaos for Ahsoka?
Well, it's not because it's not like she goes around just murdering everyone.
No.
She has.
I'm saying that she's abstaining from the order though.
Right.
Completely.
But how? Okay, then how is she completely delving into chaos?
Because she's accepting that identifying with any sort of order is bad.
Okay, but how is that fully foot into chaos? Because it's not like she doesn't try to do good.
Chaos doesn't mean you don't try to do good.
Well, okay.
Maybe the way he's talking about it, it leads to that.
Mm-hmm.
But she's explicitly not identifying with order.
Yes.
So my point is she can't be balanced.
But that's the whole point of the Grey Jedi. Like the Jedi, there's like codes,
but I
right?
think that's not between order and chaos. That balance is between good and evil.
Yeah.
Jedi and Sith. That's the balance there. It's not between order and chaos.
Right, but like I still
It's
disagree.
fine. It's fine.
You know what?
It's Star Wars.
You know what?
What?
You got Lord of the Rings wrong, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I'm just gonna go on a limb and say me as the guy with 2 lightsabers, they're definitely not fake lightsabers. I know a thing or two more about Grey Jedi.
No, you don't. Okay. Let's talk more about decadence like Ahsoka.
Not Star Wars.
So,
I quit.
so yeah, decadence aim for no identification with the group.
Okay.
The decadent sees society and ideas of the past as inferior, typically, which is interesting, he points out, as an article of faith and without proof. So they don't really have any proof to say that the past or other societies and stuff are inferior.
Mm-hmm.
They just act like it is. The reason that they do this stuff, because we know that the fascists do this because they're fearful of the unknown, so they're trying to identify with like as much order as they can.
Right.
The decadent doesn't want to believe in some sort of order because life does suck, but they can pretend like it doesn't because nothing matters, and that's what they just tell themselves.
Wait, so the decadents are like, it's like the South Park version of what, emo or goth?
Kind of,
I don't
yeah.
remember what the difference is.
Yeah, so he says they refuse to be the fool who risks belief. And a good example that he brought up earlier is Tolstoy, because there's the one part that we read where Tolstoy was talking about how he knew that what he was doing, the way he saw the world, nothing mattered.
Yeah.
But he still couldn't do the Christian thing.
Right.
Because that meant he had to believe in something that wasn't rational.
And he just couldn't do it.
So he'd rather believe that nothing matters, and I'd never identify with a group because he feels like he's by himself. He'd rather do that and be in the middle of chaos than risk being the fool and risk believing.
That seems... I shouldn't say the word dumb. That seems silly.
Well, it's more cowardice, is what he argues.
Really?
Yeah, you're too scared to believe in something.
Is that why? Do you think that would have had a huge proponent to him becoming a Christian? Is this the part you were talking about?
What? JP?
Yeah. He is JP.
Do you mean the not being willing to risk belief?
No. Well, if he believes that, if you don't risk belief, if he says that's cowardice, then he himself would have to be a cowardice to not, or a coward rather, to not accept Christ.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I think for a long time he wasn't being cowardly as much as... I'm not going to call Jordan Peterson a coward, first of all. Let's make that clear right now.
No, Jordan Peterson is...
I think...
Jordan Peterson's, as the hip kids say today, a giga chad.
Exactly. So, no, I think it was more of... Faith can be hard.
Yeah.
When you're fully when you're all logically driven. So I think
his
might have been, I don't want to speculate again, but I think his might have been more like, gotta go through all the other options and eliminate them.
Yeah.
Until you get to the one that you can't eliminate.
Which I feel like is like something like Solomon, King Solomon from Ecclesiastes did that. He's like, I'm going to go through every single possible outcome
and thing I can do. Yeah.
And figure it out. And then, so For anybody that is like unaware, as I was until like 2 weeks ago, King Solomon did literally everything. Like, I can't express how many, what he had, 700 wives and like
I think it's 500, but
500, and then like 200 something else concubines. And then he had like all the money in the world. He threw parties of like enormous extent. And like, to just summarize, King Solomon did more than anything fathomable in today's world, even if you were Jeff Bezos. Like, it's an insane amount of stuff. And at the conclusion of it, after all of the nights with women, after all the parties, after all the riches, after literally everything, he was just like, there is no point to this.
Yeah.
At all whatsoever. And the only solution is Christ.
Yeah.
Because that's the only one that is more than temporary. That is the only one that's eternal. That's the only one that ends up logically making sense if you've gone down literally every single rabbit hole. Which I think is something to be said for those that are on the fence, that there are people out there smarter than us, smarter than you, that have gone down every single rabbit hole. I promise.
Yeah. No, and that's part of what Jordan Peterson said in his Exodus series. We were trying to find it. It was in one of his trailers, and we couldn't nail down which episode it was in, and we couldn't find the trailer again.
Yeah.
But he says how he turned to God.
Yeah. Well,
in that episode.
Yeah. He said something, and that's why I came to the faith.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to share it, but we didn't have time to watch 18 hours in like a day.
Yeah.
So we are going to watch the series. We definitely are. We're both interested, and we'll let you know where it is. It's really intriguing.
Yeah.
But
so I want to move on because we haven't gotten through a ton.
No, but we've had some funny conversations because I'm right about Ahsoka.
Okay. Let's get into the 20th century.
Okay.
So he quotes Carl Jung, as saying, any internal state of contradiction, unrecognized, will be played out in the world as fate.
Okay.
So pretty much if you have some sort of moral uncertainty about like what's true or something like that, that's going to be reflected in behavior.
Yeah.
It's going to start as word. So it's going to be arguments and stuff like that. And then image. And then finally action.
Okay.
And he thinks that's kind of what culminates in the 20th century with World War II, World War I, and the Great Leap Forward with the Chinese, and then the Soviet Union with the gulags and stuff like that. That's kind of some sort of contradiction that existed that wasn't dealt with until it escalated into tens of millions of deaths.
Okay.
So that's kind of how he starts this section.
Interesting.
So we'll get into the beginning.
I just so everyone knows, we made some notes so I can kind of follow along, and I'm scared.
It's a really good section.
It's really good.
It's quite powerful.
I'm scared.
So we're starting on concentration camps.
That's why I was scared.
Yeah, it's not. He talks about it a little bit, the German concentration camps, but he focuses a lot on Soviet stuff.
Okay.
Because that's what he was kind of more interested in, it seems like.
Did they have concentration camps too?
Like death camps and stuff.
Oh, I did not know that.
In gulags, yeah.
My education has failed me.
But he talks about both. He talks about it overall. So just so people are aware.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read what he says here. Tens of millions of innocent people have been dehumanized, enslaved, and sacrificed in these efficient disassembly lines in the course of the last century to help their oppressors maintain pathological stability and consistency of moral presumption enforced through terror, motivated by adherence to the lie. So kind of what that's talking about in this one, it really focuses on the Soviets, is they killed so many people in these death camps in order to keep the lie propagated that communism worked. Because communism didn't answer certain moral things, like focusing on human nature can be bad. And that acted itself out because they had to kill tens of millions of people to keep that lie promulgated as long as possible.
And I think this is why this is exactly why Jordan Peterson is so passionate about telling the truth.
Absolutely.
Because, and I think this is, again, moral constructs coming from Christ. This is why we're told not to lie. This is exactly why. And beyond the whole like communism and Christ and it doesn't work and blah 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 blah, like if you're taking the life of another individual just to continue your lie, who are you?
Right.
What person are you? Like, ask yourself.
The adversary.
The adversary. But like I think a crazy question that more people need to ask themselves: if 5-year-old you, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, whatever you want to say, if you under 10 saw you today, what would he say?
Good question.
Yeah. So I mean, think about being in the position of like you lie to these people because that lie only lasts so long, but you can keep lying to keep the power you have, and then it gets so bad that you start taking the lives of people just so that this lie has sustenance. And 5-year-old you goes, well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to answer that?
Right.
How would 5-year-old you? I think that's a great general question. How does 5-year-old you see you? And I mean, yeah, sure, you can argue. Well, at 5, I didn't. Blah blah blah. Okay, fine. 6, 7. I don't care. Under 10, pick a number. How do they see you?
How they react. Yeah.
Are you proud?
Yeah.
You know.
For this next little bit, I probably might just lecture at you.
Okay.
A little bit to get through it because I think there's more room for discussion towards the end. That will be easier once we sum up kind of this 20th century thing.
Okay.
If that works.
Yeah.
And interrupt where you need to, but just keep that in mind. That's kind of my thought.
Okay.
So he talks about experiences in the concentration camps for the prisoners. He starts with the arrest. He compares it to the paradisal fall. He says it's unexpected, unjust, arbitrary, implacable, and terrifying. Arrest means instantaneous depersonalization and isolation from family, friends, and social position. So, like, in other words, all previous sources of order have been removed.
Yeah.
No cultural history, no people around you. None of that matters anymore. You've been woken up in the middle of the night by the SS. They've broken into your house. They didn't give you time to grab your things. And they took you, shaved your head, put a bag on you, put you in a wagon, and bring you to a death camp.
Yeah.
Everything's gone. You don't have anything to rely on. And something that really stood out to me was just so people know, he quotes a lot of Solzhenitsyn here. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He's a Russian author that spent a long time in gulags.
Okay.
He wrote One Day in the Life of Eisen Denisovich, which is a book I read last summer.
Can you explain gulag? Because you say gulag and I think like the Call of Duty, like just...
It's a prison.
Okay.
It's like a work camp, a prison.
It's a work
place.
camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where in Siberia, terrible conditions.
Okay.
They have to go work all day in negative 30-degree weather.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Okay. So harsh prison camp.
Very bad.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Got it.
But yeah, they would capture people from their houses and bring them to these places to do manual labor out in the cold. And a lot of people would die.
Yeah.
But like one of the things was they couldn't even keep their wedding rings. They had to get rid of those. And Solzhenitsyn talked about how he had his like life's work on it in his jacket. It was like he was a science guy, so he had a scientific paper or something in his pocket, and he said it was his life's work. And they made him get rid of that, and that's when he realized like you don't get to keep anything from your former life. Survival in camp life forced some individuals to accept conscious, rationalized denial of evident injustice, which made social identification possible once again, but at the cost of substantial intrapsychic damage. And what that means is some of the people, in order to survive in the camps, pretty much had to rationalize the injustice that was happening and act like it wasn't injustice and that it was okay, so that they could interact within the new social situation. Otherwise, they couldn't act at all. But obviously, that would make them like dissociate with themselves because they were actively denying the
reality that they are facing
and that they were being committed against with injustice. And they would actually become crueler if they were given jobs. Some of them were given kind of like guard jobs.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about how the result of this sacrifice of rationalizing your own injustice meant adherence to the letter of the law instead of like the spirit of the law, what it's meant to do. He would
Mhm.
follow it exactly and just punish people. It meant fidelity to the lie, like loyalty to the lie,
Mhm.
allegiance to cruelty and deceit, and hatred of the good. They couldn't sympathize with other victims of injustice because they couldn't carry out. Because they could not carry out that injustice anymore if they did sympathize.
Mm-hmm.
So they identify with tyranny to avoid moral conflict. For this to work, they had to deny the injustice committed to themselves and falsify their own experiences. And this was just some people had to do this to survive. Otherwise, they would kind of just. He talks about some people that kind of just like give up.
Yeah.
And then they just actually like die.
Yeah.
Like one guy had a vision that their camp was going to be freed
Mm-hmm.
by the Americans or something. It was a German camp.
Mm-hmm.
And it was going to be on March 30th is
Mhm.
when it was going to happen. And then the guy was like healthy and stuff, got really sick coming up to March 30th.
Mm-hmm.
2 days later, they weren't saved. He died.
Yeah.
Just straight up.
Yep.
So it's like a psychological thing that becomes so powerful that it is physical and he dies.
And I mean, I think we see that a lot. Like, your brain it controls your body.
Mm-hmm.
So if you convince your brain of something, it'll make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to interrupt your lecture.
Oh, no, that's fine.
More so. But I mean, you see it in you see this a lot, like news stories of like mom picked up car off of kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like it's not that your body's not capable of doing these crazy feats, it's that your brain won't let you, or else you'll break your body.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, you and I have experienced this plenty of times in the gym, like pulling muscles, tearing muscles. You know, fortunately, I'm the only one that's had like a bad injury, but
Mhm.
and that sucked. But like I'm okay. Like my life is relatively normal. I mean, I have back pain, but
Mm-hmm.
other than that, but if your brain was just like unfiltered, like just do whatever, you would break bones before you couldn't do something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, like, and to tie it a little bit more, like you definitely see situations of like heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody dies and then that person
I can get sick.
got really sick and then died after, because when you just,
I think that happens a lot with old couples.
yeah.
Is one spouse will die and then not long later the other one will.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like, well, this was my everything, so like why?
Mhm.
And so I can't imagine what it's like to be in a camp like that and everything's been stripped away from you, and then it's just like they know you're gonna die. It is a gulag or concentration camp, it doesn't matter, they know you're gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point. They're and it's so cowardly to do that to individuals, because like, I mean, I'm a firm believer of like, if you're going to open your mouth to somebody and you deserve to be punched in the face, you get punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
But like, this isn't like getting rocked in the face. This is like somebody like poisoned you, knows that you can't do a single thing, and then just like rags on you,
Right.
knowing that you can't do anything to fight back.
And it's all for a lie. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, ultimately it's all for a lie, which is just, don't lie.
Don't lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't be a coward. I mean, like, come on.
So that's kind of talking about what happened in the camps.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing the denying their own injustice and stuff and being cruel to other people because they just pretended that it didn't matter.
Yeah.
In doing so, they eliminate their own possibility for growth.
Yeah.
Like they can't grow anymore. So that's something to keep in mind with some of the other people. To talk about the massacres more generally that happened in the 20th century, he says they were not done by animalistic people or barbarians, you know, like we might want to portray them that way.
Sure.
He says the massacres of the 20th century were done by those who were well socialized and obedient.
Yeah.
And what he says is, like, this is me paraphrasing some of it, but he says man is not just aggressive. Like, we couldn't have done that stuff if we were just aggressive.
Yeah, no.
He says adherence to socialization and domestication, so like society and order and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One sec.
One.
And here's where I start quoting him. So, the adherence to socialization and domestication, quote, enables him to participate in production of the most truly efficient and organized of human evils. It was the discipline of the Germans, not their criminality, that made the Nazis fearsome. It was the loyalty, patriotism, and commitment of the Soviet and Chinese communists that enabled the mass persecution and the destructive labor camp elimination of their countrymen. And his point with that is that those who organized massacres and concentration camps were no different from normal people.
Yeah.
From us.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
So.
Well, I think I have to deep breath or else I'll tirade.
That's fine.
So I think that's a fortunate thing that we have here in the United States, is that the country was founded on the principle that everyone's created equal, and that the elected officials in the government are equal to you. They are no greater and no lesser, because we are all people, which is like a Christian ideology. But that's how this country was founded. So when we look at today and we see a lot of people that are like, I don't want gun rights, I don't want freedom of speech, I want some people to have limited speech, I want this and that and that, you're giving more power to the government in charge. And what's going to end up...
Well, and some of that's fine. If
Sure.
If you don't want gun rights, okay.
Then don't own it.
But what you need to understand
is it's a
that,
balanced playing field.
Yeah, they aren't just there to...
They're not just there to scare you. They're not just there to make you upset. They're not there to offend you. They're there because it keeps a balanced playing field. Because when you don't have a balanced playing field, what you have is an imbalance. And when there's an imbalance with greedy people in office,
right,
they're going to take over.
And Jordan Peterson's point is that this was the lesson that was learned in the 20th century, as you can't ignore human nature and their capacity for evil,
right?
Because if you ignore it, then it will obviously rear its head.
Yeah, well, and like you said, it's not like these men were evil; they were just following orders,
right?
So and
the problem is that they can choose security over having a clean soul. That's what a lot of them do.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think we would see it if there was an issue in our country. You would see a lot of confliction in the people that would have to back up what the government would want, if it were so to turn that way. But that's exactly the point of the rights we have, is to level out that playing field, so things like that are less likely to happen. Not impossible, but less likely. And I think that's the important thing to acknowledge. It's not about being offensive. It's not about making you uncomfortable. It's literally only about preventing what history has shown us will happen,
right,
if it's not prevented.
Well, and I think what's really interesting, I think Jordan Peterson would agree with C.S. Lewis based on this quote. Jordan Peterson, and so I think it's a really good quote. He says, "Hell is a bottomless pit. And why? Because nothing is ever so bad that we cannot make it worse." And his point was, like, the people that are in the concentration camps and stuff, they're already in a terrible situation. Some of them absolutely make it worse for themselves and everybody else. And something that C.S. Lewis says in The Great Divorce is that his kind of idea in that is that hell is locked from the inside, and they make it miserable for themselves. And I think that's a good reflection of what happened in the 20th century and what we are always capable of doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you can always dig a further hole. You can always make a situation worse. You know, like, and I think what you see happen isn't that some people definitely do make situations worse. I mean, we talked about that last episode, right? It's just like, it's already really bad, so I'm just going to make it worse for myself for I don't know what reason, but people do it. But panic, fear, you know, when you're driving a car and slips off the road and goes into water, what's the first thing you do? Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. And now it's halfway underwater. Now you can't do anything. And for those of you who don't know, the first thing you need to do is throw open your door as fast as you can. Your car touches the water, you open the door, get out. Because once the car gets so far underwater, you can't open the door. You're not strong enough. It's just not possible. So then
Yeah.
you either have to wait for it to sink or crack the window. But you're making the situation worse by not reacting, by being in fear, by being in panic, by being in shock.
Yeah. Well, and then what he talks about is some of these people needed to pretty much wholeheartedly identify with the evil or the ideology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that you can see. I think it was last episode we talked about Harry Potter.
Yep.
And I think you can see, we're talking about the fifth movie. You can see Minister Fudge as the guy that's too afraid to face the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can see Dolores Umbridge, the one that everyone hates,
I hate her.
the lady in pink.
I shouldn't hate because I'm a Christian, but she's fictional, so it's okay, right?
You can, I don't
I don't know.
I don't want to talk about that. You can see her as the one that is fully convinced of the ideology.
And that's why having discernment is so important. Being able to discern. And that's something that I think, fortunately, our church does a great job of teaching is spiritual discernment, but also be able to discern, be able to acknowledge that something isn't the way it's supposed to be. I mean, come on.
Well, and then like once the Soviet rule was over, Solzhenitsyn talks about, because he quoted a lot of, it's like pages of Solzhenitsyn.
Oh boy. Okay.
But he says that these people that really fell for the ideology, they really fell into it and it became their whole lives. They needed ideological arguments in order to hold on to a sense of their own rightness. Otherwise, insanity was not far off because they would have realized all the terrible stuff they did.
Yeah.
And one of the examples that he gives in the book is this one mom gets a letter from her daughter, and the daughter was like, hey, did you do this bad thing? Because if you didn't actually do this bad thing and they arrested you for no reason, I'm not joining the party. And her mom is so convinced of the ideology of the party that she says, yeah, I did it, even though she didn't, because she cared more about
the party's support
than the truth.
Yeah.
And in doing so, put her daughter into the party.
Yeah. Which was, I'm sure,
bad. So it's crazy how much it overrides. Do you have any more thoughts about the 20th century stuff?
Just, this is like, I think a lot of people's fears. And I know it sounds crazy. It sounds far-fetched. And a lot of people just aren't going to believe me. They're just going to dismiss it. But this could happen to us if we don't believe in
the truth
and the rights we have to protect the truth. Freedom of speech is pivotal to the truth, right?
Well, Jordan Peterson himself talks about how you need to be able to speak to figure out what the truth is.
Well, and that's what's happening to Jordan Peterson right now is that Canada's like, no, you don't get freedom of speech.
Right.
And there's a lot more complexity to it, but that is actually what is happening. Jordan Peterson said some things that's general things that people got offended by, and now you can't say those things. No freedom of speech. You get some speech.
Right. And it's a dangerous road to go down.
Oh, it's a volatile road because what you're going to see is either people submit and everybody dies.
Well, and I think, let me get on to our last topic because what we're talking about is a good segue into it. And I think you'll really like what he says.
Okay.
So this is kind of, what is evil now that we've looked at all this stuff? Evil is the process by which the significance of the anomaly or the unknown or the new thing is denied. The process by which meaning itself, truth itself, is rejected. I think we would agree with that. That was why the 20th century happened the way it did. He talks about how some people will confuse evil with the fact. So they want to deny the fact, but the fact itself can't be evil, which is an important distinction. And here's the one I think you'll like, and we can talk about it a little bit. And this is the last one I have.
Okay.
He talks about how societies define good and evil according to the goals they're pursuing. Generally. So his quote is, "This means that if the individual or the group desires anything more than to live in the light, so to speak, then truth and wisdom become necessarily foreign or abhorrent." So as soon as you put anything above truth or wisdom, or not so much that, anything more than living in the light,
Yeah.
which is the truth and stuff. Living
Right.
in this place where unknown can happen.
God's light.
I would agree with that. If you desire to do anything more than that,
Mm-hmm.
you're losing truth and you're losing wisdom, and something else is going to be placed in front of that.
Well, yeah. Well, it's something similar to the book I started reading. Alan Bloom is discussing how
Just like education, right?
yeah, it's about education and stuff, but he's basically discussing about he's telling an anecdote about a professor that is like, well, my job is to remove all of these students' prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, and what are you replacing that with? And he became incredibly infuriated. And Alan Bloom's point was, well, if you are removing something with no substitution for it, what are you removing? And we see that in habits as well.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when my mom stopped smoking cigarettes and she started using lollipops.
Mm.
And she started putting on weight because that's just a lot of sugar in regards to replacing cigarettes.
Yeah.
And I mean, by golly, you can suck a lollipop inside, but you can't smoke a cigarette inside. So it was much more often. And I was like, hey, like, you're replacing one bad habit with another. So I think we can see that
Mm-hmm.
is like, things don't exist in a vacuum. Something has to be filled, you know, like if there's a power vacuum in a country, it has to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be filled. And
well, and you can see the reflection of it now,
yeah,
where a lot of people are no longer recognizing truth and freedom of speech as the top thing. What's more important is psychological well-being
yep,
and things like that. So
and not being offended and being comfortable.
Right. And once that becomes more desirable for people than being uncomfortable but having truth,
mm-hmm.
truth needs to get, they need to get rid of truth necessarily.
And well, and that's just the dangerous road we go down.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I know I harp on it a lot, but like that's why we have the rights we have. And
Mm-hmm.
it goes, freedom of speech is number one, because guess what freedom of speech allows you to do? Say the truth.
Well, and I think it's hard because it's like what we talked about, how when things are made more abstract as ideas, they're more vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing where if the people that wrote the Constitution learned the hard way
Yeah.
that you need freedom of speech,
Yeah.
and we've had 200 plus years with freedom of speech,
Yep.
man, it's easy to forget how important it is.
Oh, well, and dude, it's just exactly what I was talking about, like with King Solomon
Mm-hmm.
and wanting temporary satisfaction and giving into like these temptations and stuff. Well, I want to go down these 100 rabbit holes before I say I'm a Christian, or I want to go to anything. I want to go down 100 rabbit holes before I find the solution. Okay, well, look, dude, somebody smarter than you's already done it.
Mm-hmm.
I promise. So when the founding fathers said freedom of speech is the number one most important thing, it wasn't because I like offending people. No, it was because they came from a tyrannical ruler where freedom of speech wasn't allowed
Mm-hmm.
and the truth wasn't valued.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what Jesus talks about.
And even if it was valued, it wasn't protected.
No, but that's exactly what Jesus talks about,
Mm-hmm.
is being truthful. I mean, I think we can see 100 ways to Sunday, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, logically,
Mm-hmm.
physically. The truth needs to be said. It needs
Right.
to be one of the most important things, and that's why it's on the top of the list.
Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it exposes you to the unknown, it's the only one of the only redemptive things you can get.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even saying the truth when it's hard, like, hey, I broke your favorite mug.
Yeah.
Dude, at least you were honest with me.
And then if you lie about it, you pretend like you don't even if it's just the lie of omission, you pretend you don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
You're still worrying about that the whole time. And that's something you have to remember later. It's something you have to keep track of. It sucks.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thing. That's why he thinks it's so important that we don't forget about that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you have anything else before I hit us with a question?
Guns, God, and glory.
Wow, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Truth. Wait, how many times can I say it? Tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. That's 5.
Nice.
And that means it's really important
Yeah, I think that's how it works.
because that's what we talked about last episode.
Yes.
And that's important.
Yes.
Isn't it like 21 days until something becomes a habit?
Mm,
Wake up every morning, just say, tell the truth. 21 days in a row.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me hit this with a question.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Peterson says that in order to prevent the evils and atrocities of the 20th century from happening again, we need to be willing to accept with humility that we do not know everything, and we need to be willing to learn from new experiences. Is this a sufficient solution to removing evil from the world?
Profound.
Yeah. Tune in next week to find out.
Or, comment down below and give us your answer. And
let
you
us
might
know.
be the lucky guy or gal.
Yep. We'll go over what someone says.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll give some of our opinions about it.
Or we'll give some of our opinions.
We'll get Jordan Peterson's opinion about it.
Yeah, because he's going to be in the next episode. It's a Skype
Crazy.
call.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Have a good week.
Have a good week. Don't lie.
Don't lie. And know your rights and tell the truth.
Yeah.
Which I know is like don't lie, but also like tell the truth.
Both
when
are
you don't
yeah.
lie.
No reason not to say
Don't
it.
lie. Tell the truth. Know your rights and support the truth above all else,
Yes.
which is Christ. But
Yep.
the truth, capital TT, Christ,
Yep.
capital C.
All right, guys. Have a good week.
Have a great week.
Thanks again for watching. This has been Lessons Learned. Goodbye.
Bye.